What's up folks, it's Chilly here, and if you clicked on this video, then you know it's time for us to talk about the Knights Templar. There are quite a lot of things to say. They recently dropped exactly what we're getting on the website, so in this video we're going to be going over this, as well as going over all of the information that they've been dropping on X. They've been dropping little snippets over the past few days, and I just want to talk about like how exactly this Civ is being positioned and marketed, and kind of my thoughts on how the Civ is going to play out. So let's just dive right into it. All right, first off, the Knights Templar are coming on April 8th, which is actually a little bit more than just a week away, so it's all coming out very, very soon. The Knights Templar are a variant of Age of Empires 4's French civilization and are available with the Knights of Cross and Rose expansion. Now, this is the thing that I really want us to index on here. Variant. This word variant is doing such a heavy lift, and I just think that the devs behind AoE 4 have been shooting themselves in the foot on the marketing department basically since this game launched, and it's so messy and confusing why they would phrase it in this way. I understand. So I've been a huge proponent of making variant civs. In fact, I even called them, I think I called them faction variants originally when I made a proposal about it on the subreddit. And I'm a big fan of seeing that like we finally have variants in the game, because making a civilization is extremely difficult. There's an excellent post by fellow AoE 4 creator Maomao, who recently went over and did a cost estimate of exactly how much it costs to produce a civilization in a game like Age of Empires 4. There's so many factors that go into it. Not only are there unique units and models, but also unique buildings, architecture, unique music, unique art, unique gameplay, of course. All of this factors into how much it costs to create a civilization. So it makes so much sense to basically recycle some of those other things and introduce new gameplay elements, which probably is the easiest thing to actually produce because it's just basically code and balance. And that allows us as fans to get a lot more different kinds of ways to play the game, which is super exciting. At the same time, from a product perspective, no one wants to play a civilization that's just a variant. So I understand why they're calling it a variant of the French civilization, because it does use the same architecture. Probably it'll use the same music as the same like villager models. They just kind of retextured and recolored a few different a few of the different models there. But there's so much more going on with this civilization. It plays nothing like the French at all. So it's really shooting themselves in the foot by calling it a variant civilization. We already saw with, you know, things like Smash Bros, where there are Echo Fighters, where it's like Roy and Marth initially were basically the same character, had the same exact animations, and just slightly different gameplay tweaks and balancing. Over time, that's kind of like deviated a little bit, and the characters have become their own unique identities. But it's okay to just have them be listed as completely different characters, even though they are very similar. Similarly, with AoE 4 civs, you could have civilizations that just have different names and just call them civilizations. There's no reason to call them a variant. In fact, I think the only reason why you would call a civilization a variant is if it plays like very similarly to the original civilization with just some slight tweaks. For instance, like the Jeanne d'Arc variant of the French, or Zhu Shi's Legacy variant of the Chinese. These are civs that basically play exactly like their original version, but just with some slight differences. That makes a ton more sense. For now, we'll keep on moving on. Historically, this order was founded in 1119 to protect pilgrims in their travels to Jerusalem. In the following centuries, the Knights Templar were recognized for their military might and vast wealth until King Philip IV of France began dismantling the order in 1307. In Age of Empires 4, the Knights Templar establishes commanderies throughout Europe, allowing their allies to fight alongside them. Capable of constructing fearsome fortifications and fielding a diverse selection of units, the Knights Templar fight to defend sacred lands. Okay, so this is super cool. I love the flavor that they're doing with the Knights Templar. I always felt a little bit off about them selecting the Knights Templar as the branding for the civilization, when they could have just called it the Crusader States. Knights Templar is a very specific knightly order. Obviously, it's the most famous knightly order, but calling it Crusader States gets the word Crusader in that tag, and I feel like that would have sold a lot better than just calling them Knights Templar. It's like you have civilizations like all of the French, all of the Chinese fighting against a single military order, as opposed to like a polity. I feel like it makes so much more sense to like take the state name rather than the order name. But they already did it with the Order of the Dragon, so I guess that's just the direction that they're going with. It's a weird direction, but I get it, and overall, I love the theme that they're going with for the civilization. Playing the Knights Templar. The Knights Templar begins the Dark Age with one goal: prepare to defend pilgrims journeying to nearby sacred sites. They do this by foraging for additional food provisions in nearby forests and establishing commanderies as they advance through the ages using their Templar headquarters, the Templar Town Center. interesting. Huh. So the Templar town center is called the Templar headquarters. I wonder if that kind of implies that they don't get multiple TCs. You know, I've yet to see a picture of this civilization with multiple TCs, but I don't know. That's just baseless speculation on my part. Each commandery grants the Knights Templar access to a unique bonus and unit, tailoring both economy and military to the situation. Love that. Constructing powerful fortresses cements their control over the map while providing an inspiration to military troops and acting as landmarks to guide pilgrims in their travels. So this is a super cool idea for theming for this civilization. So in Age of Empires 4, every single civilization plays very, very differently. And for me, when I rate a civilization's design being good or bad, in my opinion, it's based on how strong is that theme related to their gameplay. For instance, for the English, they have a very controlled, tight base, focused on defense while using long-range archers to basically like attack from a distance. That fits a very tight theme and a very strong identity for the English. Civilizations such as Delhi, I think, are a little bit weaker on their theming, where, and if you see my other videos, you'll know that I'm not a big fan of Delhi's design. The scholar and tech research oriented direction that they're going for doesn't really vibe that nicely with the units that they have and the playstyle that they have. I think it's just a bit of a mess for that particular civilization. Now, for this one, I love that there's a very unique kind of gameplay style. It seems like it's going to be very focused on these pilgrims, seems like it's going to be very focused on sacred sites, which really, really fits in with the historical identity of this civilization. Like the Templars, as they mentioned, were protectors of pilgrims traveling to, well, sacred sites, the Holy Land in Jerusalem and all that. That makes a ton of sense. I love that they're incorporating that into the game, and I love that when you're playing the Templars, it sounds like you're going to be making very different decisions compared to any other civilization. A lot of you will know that I worked on the Crusader States modded civilization with Hossein, and the direction that we went in, obviously we would have loved to do something with pilgrims. We didn't have the control to be able to make the pilgrims, for instance, like interact with the sacred sites the way we would have liked, just simply due to modding restrictions. One thing that I would have liked to see, and I still wonder if they might incorporate this, is that every civilization in this game kind of has a slightly different power curve of how they where their power spikes are. For instance, HRE hits a huge power spike when they hit Castle Age or an Imperial Age, when they get their relics or when they get this Palace of Swabia and their economy really takes off. Other civilizations like maybe like the Drushi's Legacy, they get a huge power spike when they get those early Druganoo mass spamming out, or the French Royal Knights in the Feudal Age also get a huge power spike. So like every civ kind of has a slightly different like power curve line. And one of the things that we were trying to do with the Crusader States modded civilization was kind of play around with this like timed power curve, where like your normal progression as a civilization is relatively slow compared to other civilizations, but once you get these reinforcements from abroad, like imagine calling out for a crusade and then suddenly like 10 men at arms show up on your shores and like are now able to join your fight, that gives you like this huge burst of like a power spike, but because it's a one-time shipment of units, it doesn't lead to long-lasting gains, or rather you really make an impactful play during that time that allows you to cement a lead. That's kind of what we were playing around with in the Crusader State civilization. I was hoping that something like that would be done here, because it's a very interesting identity, a very like timing focused power spike kind of civilization identity. I think it fits the Crusader States very well. I hope something like that could be still incorporated with the Knights Templar. We'll see how their alliances work exactly. Knights Templar units at a glance. Templar Brother. Templar Brother is an expensive, elite heavy cavalry unit with enhanced durability and damage. When we saw this brief little preview posted on the X for Age of Empires, where they basically said that the Templar Brothers are anti-melee specialists, or they have some bonus against melee units, or perhaps extra durability against melee units, which kind of suggests that they are really good at countering spears, which are also their natural counter. I'm not too sure how I feel about this. This is kind of a unit archetype that we saw in Age of Empires 2 and in Age of Empires 3, where you have a unit that kind of counters its own counter. In general, I'm not a big fan of that. It ends up being really messy to balance. So I really hope they don't go too deeply in that direction. It kind of implies that this unit's basically countered by crossbowmen, is the impression I'm getting, if the spears aren't countering them. I think I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of that direction. For our modded civilization, the Crusader States, we also had a Templar brother-like unit. We just called them Templar Knights. They were basically a hit-and-run kind of charge-focused cavalry. So they get longer charge distances, greater charge damage, and they deal an AoE charge attack when they hit. So it's almost like a blend between the Ayubid Camel Lancer and the Chinese Fire Lancer, where it kind of like you hit, you deal the burst damage, and then you kind of run away because you're actually relatively weak as a Templar Knight, at least in our concept. This led to really interesting gameplay situations when we ran our tournament, where like the Templar Knights were basically running in, hitting their charge, doing a little bit of damage, and then pulling back, and you kind of do this. You see this hit and run tactic being used for these knights, which I thought was super cool. And we've still yet to see a knight that kind of really fits that identity. I guess the Camel Lancer is like the closest that might fit that identity today, but a small AoE charge that is added to this like charging zeal bonus just I think makes a ton of sense for the identity of a particular unit. Pilgrim generates gold by traveling from the Templar headquarters to nearby sacred sites. I really love this idea. Templar headquarters seems to be the main town center, and so I guess your pilgrims will naturally spawn from the headquarters and then just travel to sacred sites and generate gold. So it almost seems like a different kind of way to do trade. Right now, when you set up trade, obviously your traders are also traveling across the map. It seems like that's what's happening with these pilgrims. I like that idea. I like this a lot, actually, because it means you have to essentially, as the Knights Templar, you're thinking about map control from the get-go. The moment you, I guess, hit your feudal age and you have your first fortress up, and you're like, you need to secure these routes to these sacred sites. It fits with the identity of this like historical civilization so much, or this historical entity so much. But at the same time, it makes me wonder, like, is there going to be an issue with map balancing? Because some maps have more easier to reach sacred sites than others, and sometimes it's total bullshit when a sacred site kind of spawns in your enemy's base, for example, or for instance in team games where it, like, you know, everyone who's ever played Delhi in a team game knows how hard it is to maintain control of those 3 sacred sites, because your teammates are going to be focused on their own thing, and enemies that can just send a unit out there, and the map is so huge it's really hard to control all those sacred sites at the same time as Delhi. So you can imagine how difficult this might be for a Crusader States or Templar civilization for controlling those sacred sites. So I don't know. I'm in general not a big fan of like restricting like certain kinds of maps, or personally, I think the solution would be to limit the number of maps. We have, frankly, too many maps in AoE 4. I think there should be just a handful of really good maps that everyone plays on, and we just make sure the balance is really good on those maps, rather than just like creating all kinds of maps that have just wild balance numbers, and you have to kind of memorize different kind of gameplay patterns depending on the map, and the balance completely is thrown off completely. Hospitaller Knights. After establishing a commandery, the Hospitaller Knights fight alongside the Knights Templar as men-at-arms, both strong in combat and capable of healing injured units. Very cool. Makes a ton of sense. I guess these are basically just men-at-arms. It seems like you can get both these kinds of men-at-arms as well as these like Templar men-at-arms, and they can be in your army at the same time. I like this healing animation. I have a higher res version of these photos that we'll take a look at in a moment, but it's really cool that there's a separate healing animation, and these knights make a ton of sense. In the campaign for AoE for Sultan Ascend, we saw the Hospitaller Knights appear, and they also had an ability that was related to healing. In our Crusader States modded civilization, we gave the Hospitaller Knights, they were just a mounted cavalry unit for us. They also had a healing ability, and we made them more of a faster attacking, more tanky, but weaker attacks kind of unit, so that they're particularly strong against light infantry rather than heavy units. But you know, I like the identity that they have going on here as well. It's a little bit awkward that like the Templar Knights are so focused on for the civilization, like the whole civilization is called the Knights Templar, when arguably the Knights Hospitaller were, you know, if not on an equal level as influential as the Templar Knights, if not more. The Hospitallers lasted all the way through like Malta and the siege of Malta with the Ottomans and everything. So I don't know. It's a little bit of a shame that Hospitallers weren't more featured. Knights Templar throughout the ages. Age 1. The Dark Age begins by revealing the locations of all sacred sites and relics. Interesting. Okay, so I like the revealing of sacred sites. I don't know why relics also have to be revealed. I don't know. I'm not a fan of like the like early reveal thing, because like the French get that with the neutral markets, but like it doesn't feel all that purposeful. Like when you get that bonus, like in team games it's nice, but it's like a nice little thing to have, not really actually all super important. I guess in 1v1 situations, your scout can focus on scouting the enemy's base, rather than being so reliant on having to scout out the sacred sites as well. Maybe that's the identity here. The relic focus is weird because so far this civilization doesn't seem to be doing anything with or special with relics just yet. Utilize this information and the Templars' ability to forage for food from forests to prepare the way for pilgrims. Okay, so they can get food. I'm guessing this is like the Japanese, where they the Japanese mine gold and they get some stone as well, and when they mine stone they get some gold as well. I'm guessing that the Templars can get food on drop off when they chop wood. That's a little bit of a lazy bonus. I'm sure there's a balance reason why that's happening. In general, I'm not a big fan of like the double up resource gathering thing. It just feels like there's not a strong identity here, or like the gameplay doesn't vary that greatly here, is my take on this at least. I'm curious. It seems like the Templars as a result are going to be a very food heavy civilization. At the same time, I haven't seen any other economic bonuses for this civ just yet, aside from this bonus that we're seeing here. H2, research the safe passage technology at the Templar headquarters to begin escorting pilgrims. Construct mighty fortresses to secure the way and encourage more to take up the pilgrimage. Okay, yep, I think we saw this with some other posts that they did. So first, it seems like the safe passage technology is what will start generating pilgrims. It seems like it's something that you research at the town center. So I guess this limits the amount of villagers you're going to be producing early on in H2. And you get to construct mighty fortresses to secure the way. And it seems like more fortresses you have, the more pilgrims you have. And these fortresses seem to be a keep replacement for the civilization, while also being a landmark for the civilization. So my guess is it's kind of like the House of Wisdom is like a landmark for the Abbasids and the Ayyubids, but it also like upgrades over time, and you can like choose like which faction to ally with which commandery to set up with like different European alliances. And then the building itself, you can also build it multiple times, and it probably serves as like a defensive bastion or something like that. H3, in the Castle Age, establish a commandery in the Kingdom of Castile to inspire military units near sacred sites, and call upon the Genitor, a ranged cavalry unit which excels against other ranged units. Okay, makes a ton of sense. Genitor was this mounted javelineer. We saw this in other pictures. We thought it might be called the Genites, but Genitor seems like a fine name, so very cool to see that. And we'll dive into this image in just a moment. H4, the Knights Templar do not have access to gunpowder units. Instead, they field formidable trebuchets that can be deployed atop fortresses through unique emplacements. Very, very cool. So not only do they not have a hand cannoneer then, they also don't have bombards, is what it sounds like. Bombards or culverins or any kind of like heavy siege. So I guess they almost rely on having a forward fortress that will shoot out these like Hui Pao like catapult, these trebuchets at the top. In fact, this Hui Pao is actually a little bit smaller than the regular trebuchet, it seems like. I don't know how I feel about that. You know, for the modded civilization, we also did not add gunpowder. We also did not add hand cannoneers to the civilization, and we instead added this kind of naphtha throwing, like we call them fire throwers, but it's like, imagine like throwing pots of naphtha, which is like something that you see in like popular depictions of the Crusader States, either both on the Crusader side or on the the Saracen side. Both sides were kind of throwing naphtha at each other. It would have been cool to see a unit like that, like kind of like throwing like Molotovs, essentially, like burning the ground. I was hoping for something like that here. It didn't seem like they ended up going that direction. Okay, I prepared a Figma doc that has everything laid out here, nice and clean, and I'll share this on Reddit as well so people can have access to it. But let's just dive into all the images real quick. So this is like a hero image that we see. Love seeing these Templar men-at-arms. They're obviously getting some kind of buff from being close to the fortress. It's interesting that the rooftops for these buildings are now kind of like an ochre color rather than we saw like a black color before, and I'm guessing that the black color was their age 4 version, whereas like the ochre color is more like a age 3, or maybe the color changes depending on the alliance that they end up picking. So that's pretty interesting. Clearly we see 2 different alliances over here. The first one is, I think, the Principality of Antioch. Yeah, and they get access to these, I guess they're called sergeants, or at least they look like sergeants from AoE 2. They're kind of an axe-wielding, shield-carrying unit that we're guessing is inspired by the Sicilian Normans, but it's hard to say. The video on X that shows the Templars also clearly shows the this little sergeant throwing axes, even in melee range. So it seems like this is just basically a throwing axeman. It might not even be called a sergeant in that case. It also seems like the Templars have access to normal crossbowmen. So I actually listed that here. So it seems like in the Castle Age, you get access to just normal crossbowmen. They have the same assets that you might see from the other civilizations. So it's not the Arbitraire, which is the French unique crossbowman. That being said, they also get access to something that looks very similar to the Arbitraire, this kind of Pavese crossbowman, which we're guessing is the Genoese unique unit, which we also saw in the trailer. I absolutely love this image of the pilgrims coming over to the sacred site, and a couple of Knights Templar are just kind of standing here, like watching over these pilgrims, making sure that they're getting there. I love that the pilgrims are carrying the pilgrim staff, a very famous little staff that they would carry to help them walk great distances. Of course, they're traveling all the way from the northern stretches of Europe all the way over to the Middle East, so not an easy trek to be sure. And then I like this little animation. We saw previously like some particles kind of flying out of him as he's like praying to the sacred site. This is a really cool identity for a civilization. I'm really happy that they went with this direction. This just offers so many interesting gameplay opportunities. Moving on to the Knights Hospitaller image, some shout out to the scout and the sheep in the background here. Knights Hospitaller, they're doing this like little initiation ring over here. I like the way that the developer arranged this photo, and it seems like he's also carrying a staff when he's doing. I'm guessing he's doing his healing animation. This guy. For the Knights Hospitaller, we saw. It seems like this is the feudal age version where they have like a hood, like a brown hood. Here's a slightly different look for the Knights Hospitaller that we saw in the trailer. They have full-on black hoods, looking like clan member. They have these nice fancy golden shields. I guess this is their like late game version. They look like druids almost. Here are the Templar Brothers, a lancer unit that we saw even in the Sultan's Ascend campaign. The horses that they're using seem to be German H3 horses, H3 Knight horses, the same asset for that, which is why you get this like kind of full-on plate mail kind of horse barding. It's a bit of a anachronism. I mean, it's Age of Empires, there's a million anachronisms, but it would have been nice instead if they used like the French Royal Knight kind of barding, where it's more of a cloth barding rather than this like metal barding, which is way out of time period for the Crusaders. Here is the Templars in Age 1. We see Dark Age spearmen, so that confirms that the Templars do have access to just regular barracks and spearmen in Age 1, so nothing super fancy there. And then the villagers look like they're just doing regular village things, nothing super crazy to call out here. I guess the main thing to call out is just the accents. It looks like they're distinct. The Templar villagers are different from the French ones with the black accents, black pants over here, and then black dresses for the villager woman. This is the Age 2 photo, and we can see already we have our first fortress up. I'm guessing that this civilization will age up with the fortress, so this might be something you build I'm guessing you build it in the first age and then you choose an alliance, and then it goes into the next age. In this case, you get feudal spearmen, as well as this cavalry unit right here, which is almost certainly part of the French alliance. And if I had to take a guess, the Kingdom of France gives, I'm calling them squires, but they could be maybe gendarmes or something like that, or just like some kind of light lancer unit. The word cavalier was thrown out from AoE 2, so maybe these are like cavaliers, although cavalier is such a basic generic word. I like the idea of calling them squires or something like that. They seem like kind of like a slightly heavier than the regular horsemen, so maybe they're like a bit of a medium cavalry style unit. And shout out to the sandstone texture. This is beautiful. I love the way this looks. Going into Age 3, we see the Genitours. These are the unique cavalry from the Kingdom of Castile, a unit that we saw back in AoE 2 as well for the Berbers, unique unit for them. basically this like style of mounted javelineer warfare has been a thing on the Iberian Peninsula and the North African coastline since time immemorial. This is just like the style of warfare for that region. I like that they're carrying these Adarga shields, which we also see on the Abbasid Ghulam men-at-arms, so they're kind of reusing the assets there. And then I called out previously that the helmets seemed relatively unique. Unfortunately, I'm looking at pixels here, so I'm not sure if like there are some aspects of this model that are completely original, or if this is just recycled assets from other things. Most of the models here are recycled. Here we see the flag of the Kingdom of Castile and a slightly different teal color. I feel like this civilization doesn't look that good in teal compared to the other colors. And then finally in Age 4, we've seen this image before. Not too much to comment on here, aside from the giant Hui Pao looking thing on the top of the fortress, although they kind of scaled it down a little bit actually. I like the way this civilization looks in Age 4. It's really cool that that they gave a unique landmark and building for this civ, so at least it has that kind of distinct look with the black textured rooftops. So we see in Age 4, it seems like the Crusaders do have black roofs. I wonder if that's a reference to something. I'm not really sure. It does seem like this is not just simply a Holy Land focused civilization. It's rather Templars from all over the land. They include alliances from like Northern European and Eastern European civilizations, for instance, and Western European civilizations. So it's like a bit of a mix bag. Not every unique unit in this civilization actually participated in the Crusades in the Holy Land itself. And let's just talk really quick about that actually. So we have this flag for the Knights Templar. Great looking flag, exactly what we were kind of expecting. It's weird that it's like slanted a little bit. I just wanted to comment on that. It looks a little bit awkward. Going into this post on the fortress, unique to the Knights Templar, has an aura that improves nearby units' range. Okay, so that's really interesting. I wonder if that also applies to melee units. Each fortress increases the number of pilgrims traveling. Okay, so you can build multiple fortresses and it increases how many pilgrims are going. I wonder if you can set where the pilgrims go. I'm guessing you can set a separate hotkey for that. Upgrades, technology, and emplacements include desert citadels, treasure towers, boiling oil, springald emplacement, iron clamps, trebuchet emplacement. So it seems like there's no cannon, there's no bombard emplacement, but it otherwise functions exactly like a keep with the boiling oil, springald emplacement. Iron clamps, something I'm not too familiar with. I'm not sure what this is. Treasure towers, also, of course, I'm not familiar with this. Maybe it affects the trade for this civilization or the pilgrims, maybe. And then desert citadels, also, I'm not sure. Maybe it gives that sexy sandstone texture, although I think this is just purely an H2 thing. New achievements. So there's a few things I want to call out here with the achievements. One is that Hospitallers can heal allied units. I think we saw that earlier. We see pilgrims with the pilgrim loan can generate 2,000 gold at the market. So I'm not really sure what that means. It seems like this civilization does have a market. Not sure what pilgrim loan means. And then you can have 50 pilgrims reach a sacred site. So having pilgrims go to sacred sites seems to generate gold in some way, perhaps. These are the feudal age units that we saw. Of course, we saw the pilgrim, we saw the spearman, horseman, and archer. It seems like that's the basic units for the civ in feudal age. And then you supplement that with some kind of commandery or alliance. So we saw Knights Hospitaller increases the health of all civilian units. I'm guessing that also includes pilgrims by plus 30% and increases healing from all sources by plus 30%. Okay, I'm not a big fan of the increased healing from all sources. That always seems very gimmicky, and it's very hard to tell what exactly the value is of that. I like the civilian units increase 30% because that basically means you have stronger pilgrims. So it allows you to secure whatever it is that you're securing, I guess early gold in that way. Makes a ton of sense. For Kingdom of France, military units are produced plus 15% faster and cost 5% less gold. 5% less gold is so little of a shift. I don't know. This doesn't feel that impactful, and 15% faster production also doesn't feel that impactful. I guess it's strong if you're producing like Royal Knights, for instance. That's what France does normally. So maybe that's where this benefit comes in for those really high ticket items, high ticket units. Maybe this like Squire or Cavalier type unit is a very expensive feudal unit. It makes a lot of sense. They look pretty well armored. I also want to call it this unit right here that we saw in the trailer for a very brief second. I'm calling it the Volgier, but I'm not sure if it actually is. This is based on this like unique weapon shape that we're seeing here. This is not the regular spear. Like this is what the regular spear looks like. This looks like something else entirely. And I'm guessing this is a second unique French unit because I don't see this anywhere else. And it would be weird if this civilization had like two separate spearmen. So I'm guessing this is like unique to the Kingdom of France, and they just get like a second unique unit called the Volgier or something like that that like maybe does additional things with cavalry and can be supplements your spear forces or something like that. or they just randomly threw in this asset in the trailer and I'm reading too much into it. I don't know. Principality of Antioch. I was a bit surprised that they showed off Antioch in particular. I don't think we see any other Crusader state in here, actually. Yeah, none of these other alliances are actual Crusader states, so they just included the Principality of Antioch. They didn't include the Kingdom of Jerusalem, weirdly enough, so weird. Melee units gain plus 10% damage. Again, another strong unit for another strong bonus for like cavalry, I guess also for men-at-arms. It's weird then that they likely get these throwing axe sergeant type units who clearly have a ranged attack. So maybe these things count as melee units, but then they throw their axes from a distance. If that was the case, that would really suck. That would be extremely confusing to manage and teach for new players. I really hope that they avoid like doing these like weird technicalities. I know that this is something that you see often in Age of Mythology and AoE 3 and all that stuff, but like, in my opinion, AoE 4, the more minimalistic the design approach is, the better. It makes everything so much easier to understand. And then going into the Castle Age, we of course have the Templar Brothers, Templar Men-at-Arms, and then we of course have the Crossbowmen. This is the Imperial version of the Crossbowmen over here. The reason why I included these two units here is that I haven't seen anything. I think these are both the Imperial Age version, but I haven't seen any kind of Feudal Age version of these units, so I'm assuming that you only start getting them in the Castle Age, which kind of implies like this civilization will have a huge power spike upon hitting castle. That's also when they get the relics, of course, and I'm guessing that's also when they can capture sacred sites. So that makes a ton of sense for this civilization to like be a very fast castle kind of civilization style. Angevin Empire is actually a really interesting term. It basically describes the English Empire, but the English Empire with its dominions in the French mainland as well. So it's interesting that they didn't just call them the English when they call them the Kingdom of France up here. Fortresses and docks gain 30% health. Okay, docks gaining 30% health is whatever. Fortresses gaining 30% health is cool, but not super impactful. So weird kind of bonus here. Their unique unit is likely this pikeman style unit. I'm calling them pikemen, but I don't know exactly what to call them. They're spearmen with shields on their backs. I'm guessing these are kind of like a ranged armor spearman type of unit. So spearmen that are actually good against range units, or at least have resistance against range units, which means their primary weakness will be probably men-at-arms who can attack in melee range. That's an interesting niche of a unit. So in general, I have to say this, like being focused on the sacred sites and pilgrims, super cool. But also being focused on having like all these different alliances with unique units that you can pull in from other civilizations, I'm super not a big fan of that. I'm super against that, actually. Like, to me, that's the AoE 3ification of AoE 4. It's like the shitification of AoE 4 almost. It's like there's so many unique units. New players have to keep track of so many different things. For a lot of these units, they're not going to be meta. They're going to be things that you basically never see. And then the once in a blue moon you do see it, you're going to be like, what the hell is that? I've never seen that before. I have no idea how to even play against that. And it's going to feel like bullshit when you get beaten by it. You know, imagine like you know, maybe Genitors are meta, so you see Genitors all the time, but then it's like some days someone pulls out these like Angevin pikemen, and you're just like, oh, what the fuck just happened? I just lost all my units. I got completely destroyed because I thought archers were supposed to counter spears because they counter spears everywhere else, but now for this one niche unit, it seems like I have to play it in a completely different way. That's very hard for new players to understand, and in my opinion, like the pros are not going to have an issue with this, but like for newer players, this is going to be very frustrating to deal with. It would have been nice that like if there is a unit that plays particularly differently, or plays particularly or has a particularly strong identity, that unit becomes maybe like the centerpiece of this civilization, kind of like how the Lance Connect works for HRE. HRE only has like two unique units, but like the Prelate and the Lance Connect, but like you can basically like strongly understand that like when there is a Lance Connect, you understand exactly how to play against it or what it does, because it has a strong such a strong identity with that civilization. Moving on to Republic of Genoa, pilgrims generate even more gold. Okay, makes sense. And they have Pavese crossbowmen. I'm curious if they can also set up their Paveses just like the Arbalatreurs, in which case it seems like it's almost the exact same unit as the Arbalatreurs, and I'm guessing no one cares enough to actually summon this kind of unit. I don't know. I'm curious what this unit will play like. Genitors from the Kingdom of Castile, units near sacred sites gain 20% damage and regenerate health. This seems like the kind of most meta decision for this civilization. It seems like a very sacred site heavy civilization, and now you get bonuses fighting around sacred sites. Makes a ton of sense. And at the same time, you get these like mounted cavalry units that counter archers from a distance. probably super efficient at raiding. I'm wondering how they're going to balance this unit though, because right now for most horse archer type units in this game, like Mongolai and camel archers and just the horse archer, their weakness is basically ranged units. If they do a 1-on-1 against the ranged unit, they'll lose. They're not as cost effective as archers, and usually the range is less, or they like deal too much high damage and not enough attack speed or something like that. For Genitors, if they counter ranged units, how would you balance that? I'm guessing that their counter will be horsemen. So my guess is like this is a unit that maybe attacks from a long range, maybe deals bonus damage to ranged units, maybe even has ranged armor, but has virtually 0 melee armor and probably is extremely weak to any kind of horseman unit. So they probably also move relatively slow. That's my guess with this unit. I'm also curious if they can attack while moving, like the Mongolai. That'd be super cool. The Spanish were famous for their Cantabrian circle, I think it's called. Basically, like they would throw javelins in a circle and then kind of like repeatedly pelt people with these javelins. This has been a technique used in this region of the world since like the ancient Roman times. In more modern times, they became called the caracal, which was used when they were doing mounted pistol fighting. But that's something else entirely. For Imperial Age, I should actually say not just no hand cannoneers, but no gunpowder. So I included a picture here of the French hand cannoneer. This is not a unit that we will be seeing with this civilization. So now the French hand cannoneer is actually kind of unique for the Jeanne d'Arc and French civilizations, because this is a variant that doesn't have it. There doesn't seem to be any other base differences for the Imperial Age. Now we can get into the Imperial Age alliances. The first one is Kingdom of Poland. All cavalry gain plus 10% health and plus 50% charge damage. That seems pretty damn strong, especially when you combine that with biology tech in the university. This seems like a very desirable bonus for late game if you're going for cavalry spam. And these units, I'm guessing these are called obuches. The obuch was a unit that we saw in AoE 2, which also similarly wielded this kind of like reverse pickaxe kind of thing. A very famous weapon used by Polish nobility. So really cool to see this. Probably a horseman type unit that deals damage to armored units, probably similar to the Ghazi Raider, but maybe on steroids. That's my take on this one. Moving on to the Teutonic Order, all gold units receive +2 melee armor. That seems really weak. Melee armor in general just doesn't matter that much, so I'm a little bit surprised to see this. 2 melee armor in the Imperial Age isn't going to make a difference when the knight that you're going up against has like 40 damage, so it doesn't seem that strong. The Teutonic Knights, love seeing this. This is a unit that we saw in the Sultan's Ascent campaign. It was basically extremely tanky. In the Crusader States modded civilization, we made the Teutonic Knights have the Body of Iron ability from the Shaolin monks, where they basically, if you activate the ability, you take reduced damage from incoming range attacks. So we made it very like tanky, tower divey kind of unique unit identity. It would be cool to see that, although I guess my guess is by the Imperial Age, you don't really need that ability anymore. So I'm curious what identity this unit will fit into. My guess is an anti-melee kind of unit, considering the melee armor here. Although the Templar Knights seem to already do that, I'm not really sure. And then lastly, we get the Republic of Venice, which seems particularly stacked. More favorable market exchange to and unlock the Venetian trader. So I'm guessing market exchange is like actually like trading like 100 food for like 110 gold or something like that. That does seem pretty nice in the Age 4 actually, especially if you're trying to like come back. And then unlock the Venetian trader. Not sure if that means that this civilization doesn't have a regular trader until they get the Venetian trader, or if this is like just an extra trading unit, kind of similar to an Age of Mythology, how we saw the Pishu augment the trading that was done normally by the ox carts, that kind of thing. Here we see the Venetian Galleass, one of the unique units that we saw. A Galleass is already added as a unique ship for the French. Now we get one that has the Venetian flag on their sails. Thank you for shout out to the commenter who told me what the cloth thing on the ships were. It's called a sail. I knew that. And then here we see what is probably called condottierios. These were basically Italian mercenaries, not super related to the Crusades, to my knowledge, and not super like strong identity with the Venetians in particulars to have like this spadone sword, great sword. The asset seems to be a recycled version of the HRE men-at-arms, but with like a Lance Connect greatsword. That seems to be the asset here. And then lastly, we don't have a picture of the Venetian merchant, so I just took a picture of the French trader from the wiki. It might look something like this. Who knows what it will do? Maybe it's a fast-moving merchant trader or something like that. Anyways, that is basically everything we know about the Knights Templar. A lot of information. I think we have a pretty rounded image of this civilization now, and I guess like some parting thoughts. I've already talked so much now, but like some parting thoughts I want to leave you guys with is, how do you guys feel about this civilization? Like, I know the default answer is like everyone's really excited, everyone's deuce vaulting all over the place, everyone's excited to finally take the Holy Land and all that. It's gonna be awesome, and I really love the identity with the sacred sites and the pilgrims, but at the same time, I want to give that warning again, where this civilization has so many unique units. What having a lot of unique units does is it makes it harder and harder for newer players to get into the game, to actually understand the game on a competitive level and understand like what every single unit does. And then also the identity of all these unique units start to kind of blur together with other units in the game. If every unit is unique, then no unit is unique. You get what I'm saying? Like that kind of thing. The other last thought I want to leave you guys with is, if there are any devs listening to this, like, please stop shooting yourselves in the foot. Do not call this a variant civ. Like, just don't in the menu, don't even position it underneath the French. I should not have to click on French and then like underneath it says like Knights Templar or something like that. That is inane for this civilization. This is a unique civilization through and through. Just call it the Knights Templar and place it on the same level as the other civilizations. It would have been nice if it was just called the Crusader States or the Kingdom of Jerusalem or something like that, and then you did the same thing. But you call it the Knights Templar, go with it. Don't call it a French variant. Yes, on a technical level, it is a French variant in the sense that you're using French building assets and like villager assets and maybe music and maybe the language is all the same. But like that's not that big of a deal. For your average user, they don't need to know that like the assets are going to be duplicated. I just want to know, how does gameplay work? Does it play anything like French? And from what we can tell, this civilization does not play like French at all. It has its own completely unique identity. So don't call it a variant. Don't even market it as that way. Don't do any of that. Just like, this is a civilization. And in the future, it's totally fine to release full-on civilizations just like this. There's an understanding that like, hey, RTSs, there's not a ton of money in RTSs. It makes sense that like you're gonna have to cut corners a little bit and maybe make some civs that don't have as many fancy visual and media related assets. But for us fans, we still want the gameplay. We want to play these unique identities. The gameplay here looks sick. I love the identity here. The unique units. Well, I disagree with the design decision for creating this many unique units. Of course, it's super cool. I'm super excited about that as well. So just don't call it a variant. Make more civilizations like this in the future, please. You don't need to do everything that you've been doing to create these civilizations. We just want more content. Personally, I think I would rather have more civilizations like the Knights Templar than just no civilizations at all. Or if we only get like 2 major civilizations every 2 years or something like that, because that seems to be the pace that they're going at right now, assuming that there's going to be more major civilizations releasing later this year. All right, well, anyways, I ended up monologuing a lot longer than I expected. Thank you so much for watching, and hopefully you guys are excited for the Knights Templar. They're going to be coming out really soon. I'll see you guys on the battlefield. Stay frosty, stay chilly.